I was sitting in a transport plane over the Atlantic when my phone buzzed. My dad's text made my blood run cold. After 3 years deployed in Afghanistan, after surviving firefights and losing brothers in arms, I thought coming home for Christmas would heal something broken in our family. The message read, "Christmas is better without you. Don't come." My finger hovered over the screen. I typed one word back, "Understood." Then I opened my laptop and made one quiet change to a document I'd signed 6 months ago. The hum of the plane engines felt distant as I stared at those words on my phone screen. Christmas is better without you. Kendrick, 28 years old, and I'd just completed my 3rd rotation in Afghanistan as an Army sergeant. 3 Christmases missed, 3 years of sand, heat, and watching good people die too young. I'd been counting down the days until I could sit at a table with my family, eat my stepmother's dry turkey, and pretend everything was normal for just one day. The plane was full of soldiers heading home, most of them sleeping or lost in their own thoughts. I couldn't stop rereading that text. My father, Gerald, had never been warm, but this was different. This was cruel in a way that felt calculated. My mind drifted back 6 months, to my last leave before this final deployment rotation. I'd flown home to Tennessee for 2 weeks, staying at my father's house in the small town where I grew up. Gerald had remarried 8 years ago to a woman named Diane after my mother passed from cancer when I was 16. Diane brought her daughter Amanda into the family. Amanda was 19 now, quiet and sweet, studying at community college. That visit 6 months ago had been strange. Gerald and Diane were unusually friendly, almost too friendly. They asked about my plans after the military, whether I'd thought about settling down, buying a house. Normal parent questions, I thought. Then, 3 days before I was supposed to fly back, Gerald sat me down at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. "Son, we need to talk about some practical matters," Head said, sliding the documents toward me. "You're going back into a combat zone. God forbid something happens, but we need to make sure everything is in order." Diane stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder, nodding sympathetically. "We just want to make sure you're protected, Kendrick, that everything you've worked for is secure." The documents were power of attorney forms, or so they told me. I didn't think much of it. Now, sitting in this plane with that text message burning in my mind, I felt something shift. That visit had been 6 months ago. What had happened since then? We landed at a base in Virginia for a layover, 6 hours before my connecting flight to Nashville. I grabbed my bags and found a quiet corner of the terminal. Other soldiers streamed past, running toward families holding welcome home signs. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Luis. Luis was an Army buddy who worked in the legal affairs office on base. We'd served together in Iraq years ago before he transferred to a desk job after an injury. I called him, and he picked up on the second ring. "Kendrick, brother, you're stateside. When did you land?" "Just now." "Luis, I need a favor. It's important." His tone shifted immediately. "What's going on?" I told him about the documents he'd signed 6 months ago, about the text from my father. Luis was quiet for a moment, then asked me to hold. I heard typing in the background. "What exactly did you sign?" he asked. "Power of attorney. For my benefits, my trust fund, the cabin my mom left me." More typing. Then silence. Long, heavy silence. "Luis, brother, I'm pulling up your files in the military legal database right now. Give me a second." I waited, watching soldiers reunite with their families across the terminal. A little girl ran into her father's arms, and he lifted her up, spinning her around. My chest tightened. "Kendrick." Lewis' voice was different now. "Careful. This isn't just power of attorney. You signed over full ownership transfer documents. These are property deeds. Your father had you sign away your cabin and named himself primary beneficiary on your inheritance trust. This goes into effect." Wait. More typing. "This already went into effect last week. You're listed as having voluntarily transferred everything." The terminal seemed to tilt. I sat down hard on a bench. "That's not what he told me," I said quietly. "I know, brother, I know. But according to these filings, you don't own that cabin anymore. Your father does. And your inheritance trust has the primary beneficiary now." If something happens to you, it all goes to him. But more than that, he has full access to it right now. My hands were shaking. 3 years in a combat zone. And I'd never felt this kind of fear. This was different. This was betrayal from the one person who was supposed to protect me. What can I do? I asked. Luis exhaled slowly. You have 72 hours from discovering the fraud to file a military legal challenge. Since you were on active duty when these documents were executed, there are protections in place, but you need to move fast. And Kendrick, you need to figure out what's really going on back home. I sat in that terminal for an hour, staring at my phone. The connecting flight to Nashville was boarding, but I didn't move. I needed information before I walked into whatever nightmare was waiting for me in Tennessee. I thought about who I could trust. Not my father, obviously. Not Diane. But Amanda, my half-sister. She'd been in that room when I signed the papers. She'd looked uncomfortable. Maybe she knew something. I found her number and called. It rang 4 times before she answered. Kendrick. Her voice was cautious. Hey, Amanda. I just landed stateside. Oh. A pause. Are you coming home? That's complicated. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Can you do that? I heard her moving, a door closing. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. What do you want to know? The cabin. Mom's cabin. What's going on with it? Silence. Then a shaky breath. Kendrick, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you, but Mom said it wasn't my place. And your dad, I didn't know what to do. My stomach dropped. Tell me what, Amanda? They've been renovating it. For the past 2 months. They've been telling everyone you gave them the property as a gift. Like a thank you gift for taking care of things while you were deployed. I closed my eyes. What kind of renovations? Everything. New kitchen, new bathrooms, new deck. They tore out the old wood paneling your mom had installed and put in this modern farmhouse style. They spent so much money, Kendrick. They've been posting about it on social media, showing off all the work. Your dad took early retirement from the insurance company last month. I think they're living off your money. My mother's cabin. The place where Shed spent her last summer before the cancer took her. The place where Wed scattered her ashes in the garden. They'd gutted it. Why? I asked. Why would Dad do this? Amanda's voice cracked. They're planning to turn it into a vacation rental. One of those Airbnb places. They've already taken bookings for next summer. Your dad keeps talking about how this is their retirement plan, their investment property. But Kendrick, it's not theirs. I know it's not. I was there when you signed those papers, and I heard what your dad told you. He lied about what you were signing. I felt cold, despite the heated terminal. Is there more? Your Aunt Patricia called last week. You know, your mom's sister? She saw the renovation posts on social media and started asking questions. She wanted to know how your dad could afford all this. Wanted to know if you'd really given them the cabin. Your dad freaked out. He and Mom had this huge fight about it. That's when. She trailed off. That's when what? That's when your dad decided to text you not to come home for Christmas. Aunt Patricia said she was driving down for Christmas dinner, that she wanted to see you and talk about the cabin. Your dad panicked. He didn't want you and Aunt Patricia in the same room asking questions, so he just told you not to come. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, trying to process this. My father hadn't rejected me out of anger or old resentments. Had rejected me to cover up theft. Amanda, are you safe there? I'm fine. I'm actually planning to move out after the holidays. My boyfriend Tyler has an apartment, and I've been saving up. I feel so guilty. Kendrick, I should have said something months ago. This isn't your fault, I said. You were caught in the middle. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to tell me everything you know. Everything they've said. Everything they've done with the cabin and the money. For the next 30 minutes, Amanda told me everything. Gerald and Diane had started the renovations in October, right after the property transfer went through. They'd spent nearly $60,000 already, according to bills Amanda had seen lying around. They'd hired a property management company to handle the vacation rentals. They'd bought new furniture, new appliances, even a hot tub for the back deck. But the worst part, the part that made my blood boil, was what they were planning for Christmas. They're throwing a huge party at the cabin on Christmas Eve, Amanda said quietly. They invited over 40 people. Family, friends, neighbors, people from your dad's work. They want to show off the property, show off their new retirement lifestyle. They've been calling it their early Christmas miracle. Their dream come true. Everyone thinks you gave it to them willingly. Everyone thinks you're this generous son who handed over your inheritance because you love your dad so much. I thought about my mother, about the summers wed spent at that cabin. Shed bought it with money from her parents' estate, had it put in her name only. When she got sick, she made sure her will was ironclad. The cabin goes to Kendrick when he turns 18. The trust fund goes to Kendrick when he turns 30. Shed known, somehow, that she needed to protect those things for me, and my father had stolen them anyway. Amanda, I need one more thing from you. Can you send me photos of the renovation? Any paperwork you can find? Anything that shows what they've done? Yes, I'll do it right now. Kendrick, are you going to stop them? I thought about that text message. Christmas is better without you. I thought about my mother's cabin, gutted and transformed into something unrecognizable. I thought about 3 years of combat, of watching friends die, of coming home to this. Yes, I said, I'm going to stop them. After we hung up, my phone buzzed repeatedly as Amanda sent photos. The cabin I remembered, with its rustic wood paneling and my mother's carefully chosen decorations, was gone. In its place was something sterile and trendy, designed to appeal to tourists, not to hold memories. I called Luis back. I need that JAG officer. I need legal help, and I need it now. I'll set it up. But Kendrick, you need to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. This is your father we're talking about. He stopped being my father the moment he stole from me, I said. Set up the call. I deliberately missed my connecting flight to Nashville. Instead, I found a quiet corner of the base terminal and waited for Luis to connect me with the legal help I needed. 45 minutes later, my laptop screen showed the face of Captain Sarah Brennan, a JAG officer who specialized in fraud cases against service members. Captain Brennan was in her early 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened without interrupting as I explained everything. The documents he'd signed, what had been told versus what they actually said, the renovations, the stolen money, the Christmas party planned at my stolen property. When I finished, her jaw was tight. Mr. Hayes, what was done to you is a federal offense. Defrauding a deployed service member carries serious criminal penalties. I'm going to need you to send me everything you have, every document, every photo, every text message. I forwarded Amanda's photos, screenshots of my father's text, the timeline of events. Captain Brennan reviewed them in silence, her expression growing darker. These signatures were notarized, she said finally, but the documents themselves were altered after you signed them. Look here. She shared her screen, pointing to the digital copies of what I'd signed. These addendums, these property transfer clauses, they weren't in the original documents. They were added later, after your signature was already on the page. Your father committed forgery on top of fraud. My hands clenched into fists. What can we do? We file an emergency injunction immediately. I can have all assets frozen within 2 hours. The cabin, the trust fund, any transactions made with your money, all of it stops. Then we file criminal charges with the local district attorney and civil charges for recovery of damages. Mr. Hayes, I want you to understand something. Your father is going to face serious legal consequences. This could mean jail time. I thought about Gerald, about the man who'd raised me after my mother died. The man who'd grown distant over the years, who'd remarried and seemed to forget I existed, except when he needed something. These addendums, these property transfer clauses, they weren't in the original documents. They were added later, after your signature was already on the page. Your father committed forgery on top of fraud. My hands clenched into fists. What can we do? We file an emergency injunction immediately. I can have all assets frozen within 2 hours. The cabin, the trust fund, any transactions made with your money, all of it stops. Then we file criminal charges with the local district attorney and civil charges for recovery of damages. Mr. Hayes, I want you to understand something. Your father is going to face serious legal consequences. This could mean jail time. I thought about Gerald, about the man who'd raised me after my mother died. The man who'd grown distant over the years, who'd remarried and seemed to forget I existed except when he needed something. It's all locked down pending investigation. What happens now? Now we wait for him to realize what's happened. And Mr. Hayes, you should consider going to Tennessee. This is going to move fast, and you'll want to be there. I booked a rental car and started driving. 8 hours from Virginia to my hometown in Tennessee. 8 hours to think about what came next. 8 hours to replay every memory of my father and try to figure out when Head decided I was worth less than a property investment. I was 3 hours into the drive when my phone started ringing. I glanced at the screen. Gerald. I didn't answer. 5 minutes later, it rang again. Diane. I let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes after that, an unknown number. Then another call from Gerald. Then Diane again. 7 missed calls in the span of an hour. I pulled into a rest stop somewhere in North Carolina and checked the voicemails. Gerald's voice was angry, defensive, panicked. Kendrick, what the hell have you done? You froze our accounts. You can't do this. This is our property, our investment. Call me back right now. You're ruining Christmas. You're being vindictive and spiteful. Call me back. Deanne's message was different, manipulative in that special way Shed perfected over the years. Kendrick, honey, I don't know what's going on, but there's been some kind of mistake with the bank accounts. We can't access anything. Your father is very upset, and I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. We're family, sweetie. We need to talk about this like adults. Your father only wanted to make sure everything was secure for your future. Please call us back so we can sort this out before Christmas. We love you. The third voicemail made my blood run cold. It was from a man who identified himself as Howard Castellano, attorney at law. His voice was nervous, professional, carefully worded. Mr. Hayes, this is Howard Castellano. I represent your father, Gerald Hayes, and his wife Diane. I need you to call me immediately regarding the legal action you've initiated. There's been a significant misunderstanding about the property transfers and trust management, and we need to resolve this before certain matters become public record. The injunction you've filed has created complications that I believe we can address through negotiation. We'd like to discuss a settlement that's fair to all parties. Please call me as soon as possible at this number. Thank you. I sat in the rental car, engine idling, and felt something click into place. Howard Castellano. My father had an attorney. Not just an attorney called in a panic after the accounts were frozen, but an attorney who was already involved, who already knew about the property transfers. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment theft. This was planned, premeditated. My father had consulted with a lawyer about how to steal from me. I called Captain Brennan back. They lawyered up. A guy named Howard Castellano. He left me a voicemail talking about settlements. Don't respond, she said immediately. Don't negotiate. Don't engage. Mr. Castellano is trying to keep this quiet because he knows how bad this looks. A settlement means no criminal charges, no public record, no consequences for your father. We're not doing that. Let him sweat. I drove through the night, stopping only for gas and coffee. The roads were empty, the December darkness thick around the car. Somewhere around 2 in the morning, crossing into Tennessee, I thought about that single word Id texted back to my father. Understood. Id meant it in more ways than one. I understood that he didn't want me at Christmas. I understood that Head chosen money over me. I understood that the father Id thought I had never really existed. And I understood, with complete clarity, that I was done letting him hurt me. I arrived in my hometown as the sun was rising on December 23rd. The small town looked the same as always. Quiet streets, Christmas decorations on every storefront. That small-town charm that had felt suffocating when I was young. I drove past my father's house but didn't stop. Instead, I checked into a small motel on the edge of town and collapsed onto the bed, exhausted but unable to sleep. My phone buzzed. A text from Amanda. Are you here? Everyone is freaking out. Your dad is calling everyone he knows trying to figure out what's happening. Please be careful. I texted back. I'm here. Stay out of it. This isn't your fight. It kind of is, she replied. I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry, Kendrick, for all of it. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just sent back a simple thank you and put my phone on silent. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. Tomorrow, everything would come to a head. I woke up early on Christmas Eve morning to my phone vibrating nonstop. 14 missed calls, 23 text messages. I scrolled through them. Gerald, Diane, Howard Castellano, Amanda, and several numbers I didn't recognize. One name jumped out at me. Aunt Patricia. Patricia was my mother's younger sister, and she had always been the rebel of the family. Where my mother had been gentle and patient, Patricia was fierce and outspoken. After my mom died, Patricia had tried to stay in my life, but Gerald had made it difficult. He didn't like her questions, didn't like the way Shed looked at him during the funeral like she knew something was wrong. I called her back first. She answered on the first ring. Kendrick James Hayes, where the hell are you and what the hell is going on? Despite everything, I smiled. Good morning to you too, Aunt Pat. Don't you good morning me. I've been calling your father's house for 2 days trying to figure out why you're not coming for Christmas. And that woman, that Diane, keeps giving me the runaround. Then yesterday, I find out there's some kind of legal situation with the cabin. Your mother's cabin? Talk to me right now. I told her everything. The documents, the fraud, the renovations, the frozen accounts. Patricia listened in silence, and when I finished, she let out a string of curses that would have made my drill sergeant proud. I knew it, she said finally. I knew something was wrong. When I saw those renovation posts on social media, my gut told me your father was up to something. Your mother, God rest her soul, she knew too. That's why she had that will drawn up so tight. She told me once, right before she died, that she was worried about what Gerald would do if he got his hands on her money. She said Head changed after she got sick, became obsessed with finances and security. She made sure that cabin and that trust were protected. Can you meet me? I asked. I'm at the Pinewood Motel on Route 19. He'll be there in 20 minutes. And Kendrick? Bring copies of everything. We're going to bury that son of a bitch. True to her word, Patricia pulled into the motel parking lot exactly 20 minutes later, driving her old pickup truck and carrying a banker's box. We sat in the motel's small breakfast area, surrounded by stale coffee and packaged pastries, and spread documents across the table. At 9 o'clock, I had a video call scheduled with Captain Brennan and a local civilian attorney Shed recommended, a former Army Ranger named Marcus Webb, who now practiced family and property law in Tennessee. Marcus appeared on screen looking exactly like what you'd expect from a former Ranger. Buzz cut, direct gaze, no-nonsense attitude. Mr. Hayes, I've reviewed your case with Captain Brennan, Marcus said without preamble. Your father is in serious trouble. We're looking at felony fraud, forgery, exploitation of a service member, and theft. The evidence is overwhelming. He walked us through the full scope of what Gerald had done. The property transfer documents had been altered after Id signed them. The notary stamps were legitimate. But the notary had only witnessed my signature on the power of attorney forms, not on the property transfer addendums that had been added later. Gerald had forged my initials on the additional pages. The trust fund was worse. My mother had set it up to be untouchable until I turned 30, with Gerald named as trustee only for the purpose of managing investments. He was never supposed to withdraw funds, but Head used the fraudulent power of attorney to claim Id authorized early distribution. In 2 months, Head withdrawn nearly $60,000. The cabin's current market value is approximately $350,000, Marcus said. Combined with the trust fund theft and the renovation expenses, we're looking at over $400,000 in damages. Your father has already spent most of the liquid cash. The district attorney's office is very interested in this case. Patricia leaned forward. Can we get criminal charges filed? Marcus nodded. Already in process. I spoke with the DA this morning. They're preparing an arrest warrant. Given that it's Christmas Eve, they're moving fast. They don't want this dragging out over the holidays. My phone buzzed again. Gerald. Then Diane. Then Howard Castellano. The attorney. Amanda called, and this time I answered. Kendrick, where are you? She sounded panicked. I'm in town. What's wrong? Everything. Your dad is losing his mind. The bank froze everything yesterday, and now he can't access any accounts. He can't pay the contractors who finished the cabin work. He can't make the final payment to the furniture company. Hess on the phone, screaming at lawyers and calling everyone he knows, trying to figure out what to do. And Kendrick, the party. They're not canceling the Christmas party tonight. I exchanged glances with Patricia. What do you mean they're not canceling it? They're going forward with it. Your dad is telling everyone that this is all a misunderstanding, that you're upset about something and overreacting, but that it'll all be cleared up after the holidays. Hess saying you have PTSD from the war and you're not thinking clearly. Mom is backing him up, telling people that you're struggling with the transition home, and that's why you're causing problems. They're planning to use the party to make you look like the bad guy. My hands clenched around the phone. Hess claiming I have PTSD. Worse than that, Amanda's voice dropped to a whisper. I overheard Mom on the phone with Howard, the lawyer. They're planning to argue that you're not mentally competent to make legal decisions. They want to get some kind of conservatorship over you. Claim you need protection from yourself because of your military service. Howard was researching how to challenge your legal capacity. The room went silent. Patricia's face flushed red. On the laptop screen, Marcus Webb's expression turned to stone. They're going to weaponize your service, Marcus said quietly. They're going to use the fact that you were in combat to claim you can't be trusted with your own decisions. It's disgusting, and it won't work, but they're going to try. Captain Brennan spoke up from the split screen. Mr. Hayes, this changes things. We need to move faster. If they're planning to question your competency, we need to shut that down immediately. Can you get a statement from your commanding officer? Medical records showing you were cleared for duty. I can do better than that, I said. I can show up at their party tonight and let everyone see exactly how competent I am. By 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve, I was standing in the parking lot of my mother's cabin with Patricia, Marcus, and Amanda. The sun had set, and the cabin glowed with Christmas lights strung along the new deck railing. Expensive cars lined the driveway. Music and laughter drifted through the cold December air. I hadn't been to the cabin since before my deployment. Seeing it now, transformed beyond recognition, felt like another death. The rustic wood exterior had been painted a trendy gray. The old porch swing my mother had loved was gone, replaced by modern Adirondack chairs. Through the windows, I could see people mingling, holding wine glasses, admiring the renovations. You ready for this? Patricia asked. I straightened my dress uniform. Captain Brennan had suggested I wear it, and she was right. There's something about a military dress uniform that commands respect, that makes people pause and think twice. I looked at Amanda, who'd agreed to come with us despite her fear of confronting her mother. Thank you for doing this, I said to her. She nodded, pale but determined. It's the right thing. I should have done it months ago. Marcus checked his watch. The deputies are in position. They're waiting for your signal. You walk in, you say what you need to say, and when things get heated, they'll move in. Wed coordinated with the local sheriff's office that afternoon. The district attorney, despite it being Christmas Eve, had worked through the day to prepare arrest warrants. Shed told Marcus that fraud against a deployed service member was exactly the kind of case that made her blood boil, and she wanted to send a message. At 8 o'clock, we walked toward the cabin. I could hear conversations through the door, laughter, the clink of glasses. I took a breath and opened the door. The room went silent like someone had flipped a switch. 40 faces turned toward me. I saw neighbors who'd known me since childhood, family friends who'd brought casseroles after my mother's funeral, people from my father's insurance office, and there, in the center of the room, standing by the new granite kitchen island, were Gerald and Diane. My father's face went white. The wine glass in his hand trembled. Diane's practiced smile froze, then cracked. Kendrick, Gerald said, his voice strained. What a surprise. We didn't think you'd make it. I stepped into the room, Patricia and Marcus flanking me, Amanda following behind. The crowd parted instinctively. I wouldn't miss this for the world, I said calmly. I wanted to see my mother's cabin one last time before my father completes the theft. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone dropped a glass. Gerald's face flushed red. "That's enough," he said sharply. "You're being disrespectful and inappropriate. These people are our guests. These people deserve to know the truth." I turned to address the room. 6 months ago, my father asked me to sign some documents before I deployed to Afghanistan. He told me they were power of attorney forms, just precautions in case something happened to me. What he didn't tell me was that Head forged additional pages onto those documents, transferring ownership of this cabin and giving himself access to my inheritance trust. He stole nearly $400,000 from me while I was in a combat zone. The room erupted. People started talking over each other, voices rising in confusion and shock. Diane moved toward the door, trying to usher people out. "This is a family matter," she said loudly, her voice artificially sweet. "There's been a misunderstanding. Kendrick is confused. Has been through so much overseas, and we're trying to help him." "I'm not confused," I said clearly, "and am not suffering from PTSD, despite what my father and stepmother have been telling people. What I am is a victim of fraud." Marcus stepped forward, pulling out his identification. "My name is Marcus Webb. I'm Mr. Hayes' attorney. I want to make sure everyone here understands what's happened, because apparently Mr. Gerald Hayes and Mrs. Diane Hayes have been spreading false information." He read aloud from the legal documents, his voice carrying through the cabin. He detailed the forged signatures, the unauthorized trust fund withdrawals, the property transfer that had never been legitimately authorized. He read the dates, the amounts, the timeline of deception. Several guests were family friends who'd known my mother. I watched their faces change as they understood what had been done. A woman named Sharon, who'd been my mother's best friend, put her hand over her mouth. An older man named Frank, who'd served in Vietnam, stood up from his seat, his face hard. Patricia stepped forward. "I'm Susan's sister, Kendrick's aunt. I want everyone here to know that Susan, when she was dying, went to great lengths to protect her son's inheritance. She knew something like this might happen. She set up that trust specifically to ensure Gerald couldn't access it. She put that cabin in Kendrick's name alone. She protected her son even from beyond the grave, and Gerald spat on her memory by stealing from him anyway." Gerald exploded. "You have no right to come into my home and accuse me of anything. I'm his father. I raised him. I sacrificed for him. This cabin, this money, it's all family assets. I have every right to manage them." "You have no rights here," I said quietly. "This was never your home. This was my mother's cabin. She left it to me. You stole it." Amanda stepped forward then, tears streaming down her face. "Hess telling the truth. I was there when Kendrick signed the papers. Your dad lied about what they were. I heard him. And I've watched you spend Kendrick's money for months, Mom. I've watched you and Gerald act like you won the lottery. You knew it was wrong. You both knew." Diane whirled on her daughter. "Amanda, how dare you? We're your family." "No," Amanda said, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't lie. Kendrick is more family to me than you've been." Frank, the Vietnam veteran, stood and walked to where I was standing. He looked at me, at my uniform, at the medals on my chest. Then he saluted me. "Thank you for your service, son, and I'm sorry about this. Your mother was a good woman. She deserved better than this." He turned to Gerald. "And you should be ashamed of yourself." He walked out. Others followed. Sharon hugged Patricia and whispered, "Susan would be proud of him." Before leaving, one by one, the guests filtered out. Some angry, some confused, all uncomfortable. Within 20 minutes, the cabin had emptied except for Gerald, Diane, Patricia, Marcus, Amanda, and me. Gerald stood by his expensive new kitchen island, breathing hard, his face red. "You've ruined everything. You've humiliated us. You've destroyed our reputation in this town. You did that yourself," I said. That's when the knock came at the door. Marcus opened it, and 2 sheriff's deputies stepped inside. Behind them was a woman in a business suit who introduced herself as Janet Morrison, Assistant District Attorney, Gerald Hayes, one of the deputies said. My father's face went gray. "Yes, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and exploitation of a military service member. You have the right to remain silent." I watched as they read him his rights. As they handcuffed him in the cabin head stolen from me, Diane collapsed onto one of her expensive new couches, sobbing. The deputies handed her papers as well. "Mrs. Hayes, you're being served with a civil suit for recovery of stolen funds and a restraining order preventing you from accessing or disposing of any property connected to this case." As they led Gerald toward the door, he looked at me with pure hatred. "You're destroying your own family. Your mother would be ashamed of you." "My mother," I said quietly, "made sure I was protected from you. She knew. She always knew." The deputies took him away. Janet Morrison stayed behind, speaking with Marcus about next steps, about arraignment schedules and evidence submission. Diane sat on the couch, staring at nothing, her perfect party in ruins around her. But the night wasn't over yet. As Marcus was packing up his briefcase, there was another knock at the door. Amanda answered it, and a man in his 60s stepped inside. He looked tired, uncomfortable, and when he saw me, he seemed to shrink. "Kendrick Hayes," he said. "I'm Howard Castellano, your father's attorney. Or rather, I was your father's attorney. I'm here to officially withdraw as his counsel." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "On Christmas Eve." Howard nodded. "I didn't know the full extent of what had been done until your injunction hit and I was forced to review all the documents. Your father lied to me about how he obtained those signatures, Mr. Hayes. He told me you'd willingly signed over the property as a gift, that you'd wanted to help fund their retirement. I believed him. I prepared what I thought were legitimate estate planning documents. When I realized what Head actually done, how Head forged additional pages, altered your signatures, I can't represent someone who lied to me and used my services to commit fraud. I'm ethically obligated to withdraw." He pulled an envelope from his coat pocket and handed it to me. "I wanted to give you this in person. It's everything I have related to your case, your father's initial consultation notes, the documents he asked me to prepare, the timeline. I think you'll find it useful for your criminal case." I took the envelope, stunned. "Why are you doing this?" Howard's expression softened. "I went to high school with your mother, Susan. We were in the same graduating class. She was a good person, kind and honest. We weren't close friends, but I remember her. When your father came to me a year ago asking about accessing your inheritance, I should have questioned it more. I should have insisted on speaking with you directly. I didn't, and I regret that. This is the least I can do to make it right. Your mother deserved better. You deserve better." He nodded to Marcus, then to me, and left. The cabin was quiet except for Diane's quiet crying. Patricia put a hand on my shoulder. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I looked around the cabin. My mother's cabin, violated and transformed. I thought about the party that had just dissolved, about my father in handcuffs, about 3 years of fighting a war only to come home and fight another one. "I want to go home," I said. "But not here. This isn't home anymore." We left Diane sitting in the dark, expensive cabin, surrounded by the ruins of her stolen dreams. Amanda came with us, refusing to stay with her mother. We drove to Patricia's house on the other side of town, where she set up the guest room for Amanda and the couch for me. That night, lying in the darkness of my aunt's living room, I finally let myself feel it all. The betrayal, the anger, the grief. But underneath it all was something else. Relief. The truth was out. Justice was being served, and I was free from the weight of that relationship. Christmas morning felt surreal. I woke up on Patricia's couch to the smell of coffee and bacon. Amanda was in the kitchen helping my aunt make breakfast. And for a moment, it almost felt normal. Almost like family. Over the next week, the legal process moved faster than I expected. Gerald was released on bail but faced multiple felony charges. The district attorney's office, true to their word, was taking the case seriously. They'd found additional evidence that made things worse for my father. Email correspondence with contractors showing Head known the property wasn't legally his but had proceeded with renovations anyway. Bank statements showing the pattern of trust fund withdrawals. Even text messages to Diane discussing how they needed to keep me away from Patricia because she was asking too many questions. Marcus Webb worked tirelessly on the civil case. By December 28th, we were in court for an emergency hearing. The judge, a woman in her 50s who'd also served in the military, was not sympathetic to Gerald's position. "Mr. Hayes," she said, looking at my father over her reading glasses, "you stole from your son while he was serving his country. You forged documents, you lied to attorneys, and you attempted to weaponize his military service to cover your crimes. I'm granting the injunction in full. All property is returned to Kendrick Hayes. All funds withdrawn from the trust are to be repaid with interest. You and Mrs. Hayes are jointly liable for damages." Gerald tried to argue. His new attorney, a nervous young man who'd clearly drawn the short straw, attempted to claim the renovations had improved the property value and should be considered. The judge shut him down. "You don't get credit for improving property you stole, counselor. Mr. Gerald Hayes is ordered to repay $60,000 withdrawn from the trust fund. Additionally, he's responsible for all legal fees incurred by Mr. Kendrick Hayes in recovering his property. Do you understand?" Gerald understood. He looked 10 years older than he had at the Christmas party, diminished and defeated. The district attorney offered a plea deal a few days later. Gerald would plead guilty to felony fraud and forgery. He'd serve 2 years of probation, perform 300 hours of community service, and be required to repay all stolen funds. If he violated probation, he'd face up to 5 years in prison. He took the deal. Diane, facing only civil charges, agreed to a settlement. She'd divorce Gerald to protect her own assets, repay her share of the damages through the sale of some jewelry and her car, and would have no claim to any of Gerald's remaining property. She signed the papers without looking at me. The inheritance trust, though depleted, was restored through the forced sale of Gerald's truck and penalties taken from his retirement account. It wouldn't be the full amount until the restitution payments came through over the next 2 years. But it was returned to my control. The cabin was legally mine again, free and clear. I spent the days between Christmas and New Year's at the cabin, alone. Marcus had the locks changed immediately after the court order, and Gerald and Diane's belongings were boxed up and removed. I walked through the renovated space, trying to reconcile this modern, sterile place with my memories of what it had been. In the back bedroom, the one that had been my mother's, I found boxes that Gerald had shoved into the closet. Inside were photo albums Head hidden away, pictures of my mother and me at the cabin, of summers spent swimming in the lake, of quiet evenings on the porch. Head tried to erase those memories, but Head kept the evidence of them hidden away like guilty secrets. I sat on the floor of that bedroom surrounded by photos and cried for the first time since coming home. Not for my father or for what I'd lost, but for my mother and for the protection Shed tried to give me even after death. Amanda visited a few days later, bringing boxes of my belongings that Shed rescued from my father's house before Diane could throw them away. We sat on the new deck, drinking coffee in the cold January air. "I signed a lease with Tyler," she said. "We're moving into an apartment next week. I start classes again in 2 weeks. I'm changing my major to social work. I think I want to help people who are stuck in situations where they can't speak up, like I was." "That's good," I said. "You'll be great at it." "I'm sorry," she said again. "I should have told you sooner about what they were doing. You were afraid. I understand that. And you came through when it mattered. That takes courage." She smiled, small and uncertain, but genuine. "Are we still family? Even after all this?" I thought about that question. Family. Gerald had shared my blood, but had betrayed me. Amanda had no blood relation to me at all. But Shed stood up for what was right when it cost her everything. "Yeah," I said, "we're still family." Patricia became a constant presence in my life. She helped me sort through the cabin, helped me decide what of the renovations to keep and what to change back. We repainted the exterior to something closer to the original color. We couldn't afford to undo all the interior changes, but we found ways to blend the new with small touches of the old. My mother's favorite painting on the wall, her quilts on the beds, her books on the shelves. In mid-January, I received a letter forwarded from my father's house. It was from Gerald, written on lined notebook paper in his familiar handwriting. I almost threw it away unopened, but Patricia convinced me to read it. The letter was not an apology. It was bitter, accusatory, full of justifications. He wrote that I'd destroyed the family, that I'd been ungrateful for all He'd done raising me alone after my mother died, that the cabin and the money should have been his by right as my father. He wrote that my mother had been selfish to exclude him from her will, that Shed poisoned me against him. He wrote that I'd chosen the law over family, and He'd never forgive me for that. I read it once, then burned it in the cabin's fireplace. Patricia watched the paper curl and blacken. "He'll never take responsibility," she said quietly. "Some people can't. They'd rather destroy everything than admit they were wrong." "I know," I said. "I'm done hoping he'll change." But there was one more surprise waiting. In early February, a package arrived at Patricia's house, addressed to me. The return label showed it was from Howard Castellano, the attorney who had withdrawn from representing my father. Inside was a thick file of documents and a handwritten note on legal letterhead. "Kendrick, I hope this letter finds you well. I've spent the past several weeks struggling with what I should do with the information I am about to share with you. Legally, I'm in a gray area, as some of this was covered under attorney-client privilege with your father. However, given that he used my services to commit fraud, and given what I've learned about his true intentions, I believe you have a right to know the full picture. Your father first came to me 14 months ago. Not a year ago, as I initially told you. He came asking about ways to access your inheritance trust legally. I told him it was impossible without your consent or a court order proving incapacity. He asked specifically about conservatorship, about what it would take to have you declared incompetent. I told him it was a high bar, nearly impossible for an adult with no history of mental illness. He came back 6 months later with a different plan, getting you to sign documents during your leave. He asked me what kind of language would need to be in a power of attorney to give him full control. I prepared what I thought were standard estate planning documents. I never saw the additional pages, he added, the forged signatures, the altered clauses. He did that after our meetings. I'm including in this package copies of all his consultation notes, all the documents he asked me to prepare, and some additional information I think you should see. 9 years ago, your father came to me for a different matter, a lawsuit settlement. He'd lost a significant amount of money to gambling, over $100,000, and was being sued by several creditors. I represented him in settling those debts. It nearly bankrupted him. Your mother bailed him out, using money from her parents' estate. I'm telling you this because I think you need to understand that this pattern isn't new. Your father has a gambling problem he's never addressed. When he learned about the size of your inheritance and the cabin's value, he saw it as solving his financial problems. He'd racked up new debts over the past 2 years, debts I didn't know about until recently. Credit cards, personal loans, money He'd borrowed from friends. He was desperate. This doesn't excuse what he did. Nothing excuses it, but I thought you deserved to know that this wasn't just greed. It was addiction and desperation. Your mother protected you from all of this. She knew what he was capable of. She structured that trust and that will specifically to keep him from accessing your inheritance, even if it meant cutting him out completely. I hope this information brings you some peace, or at least understanding. Your mother was a wise woman. She loved you very much. I'm sorry I didn't see through your father's lies sooner. If there's anything else I can do to help, please don't hesitate to contact me. I sat with that letter for a long time. A gambling problem. Over $100,000 lost 9 years ago. My mother bailing him out, then dying shortly after and making sure he could never access my inheritance. Shed known. Shed seen the pattern, understood the danger, and protected me the only way she could. I thought about all the times growing up when money had been tight, when Gerald had been stressed and short-tempered. I thought about the arguments I'd overheard between him and my mother, about responsibility and trust. I thought about how, after she died, He'd remarried quickly, how Diane had money of her own from her first marriage, had been looking for security, for someone to shore up his financial instability. And when that wasn't enough, He'd turned to my inheritance. Understanding didn't mean forgiving, but it meant I could stop wondering why. I could stop trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, how I'd failed as a son. This wasn't about me. It never had been. It was about his demons, his choices, his refusal to get help or change. I called Patricia and told her what I'd learned. She wasn't surprised. Susan told me once, near the end, that she was worried about Gerald's gambling. Patricia said she made me promise that if anything happened to her, I'd make sure he didn't get his hands on your inheritance. That's why she made me the backup trustee in her will. That's why she was so specific about the cabin going directly to you. She was protecting you from him even then. She knew he'd try something. I said quietly. She knew, Patricia confirmed, and she made sure you'd be protected. Your mother loved you fiercely, Kendrick. Everything she did was to give you a chance at a life free from his mistakes. It's late February now, nearly 3 months since that text message on the plane. I'm sitting on the deck of my mother's cabin, watching the sun set over the Smoky Mountains. The deck is still new, still part of the renovations I can't afford to undo, but I've made peace with it. This cabin is a blend now, the old and the new, my mother's memory and my own future. I completed my military service and transitioned to civilian life. The transition was harder than I expected, not because of combat stress, but because of everything that happened with my father. Some days I wake up angry. Some days I wake up sad. But most days now, I wake up feeling something I haven't felt in years. Free. I decided not to turn the cabin into my home. Instead, I'm partnering with a veterans nonprofit organization that Patricia connected me with. We're converting the cabin into a retreat space for soldiers transitioning back to civilian life. A place where they can come for a week or two, away from the chaos and expectations, to just breathe and figure out their next steps. The organization handles the management and programming. I handle the property and funding. It feels right. It feels like something my mother would have approved of. She always believed in helping others, in making space for people who were struggling. This cabin, which was supposed to be my father's retirement investment, is instead becoming a place of healing. Amanda comes by every week. She and Tyler are doing well, and she's thriving in her social work program. She volunteers with the veterans nonprofit, helping with intake and family counseling. She's found her calling, and watching her come into her own has been one of the few bright spots in all this darkness. Patricia has become the family I needed. Shay's the one I call when I have a bad day. Shay's the one who shows up with groceries when I forget to shop. She's the one who sits with me on this deck and tells me stories about my mother, keeping those memories alive. I haven't spoken to Gerald since the courtroom. He's on probation, working a part-time job to make his restitution payments. I get a check from him every month, court-ordered, like clockwork. I deposit them without looking at them. Diane divorced him in January and moved to Florida to live with her sister. I don't know if she thinks about what they did. I don't care anymore. The hardest part has been accepting that some relationships can't be salvaged. I grew up believing that family was everything, that blood meant loyalty, that fathers protected their sons, learning that my father valued money more than me, that he was willing to steal from me and then destroy my reputation to cover it up, shattered something fundamental. But in the breaking, something else was revealed. I am not defined by his failures. I am not less valuable because he chose money over me. I am not broken because I set boundaries and demanded justice. That single word I texted back to him, understood, has taken on layers of meaning I couldn't have anticipated. I understood that he didn't want me there for Christmas. I understood that he'd stolen from me. I understood that he was willing to lie, to manipulate, to destroy our relationship for financial gain. But most importantly, I understood my own worth. I understood that I deserved better. I understood that protecting myself wasn't selfish. I understood that justice and family loyalty aren't mutually exclusive. They're the same thing. Real family doesn't steal from you. Real family doesn't weaponize your trauma. Real family shows up, tells the truth, and stands by you even when it's hard. The quiet change I made to the paperwork on that plane, the checkbox that triggered automatic legal review of any power of attorney if misused, was a safeguard I didn't even remember existed. It was built into military legal protections, specifically for situations like mine. Deployed service members are vulnerable, and the system has checks in place to protect them. When Gerald's fraud triggered those protections, everything unraveled for him. Head thought he was smart, that Head covered his tracks. But he hadn't counted on the military taking care of its own. He hadn't counted on me having resources, legal expertise, and people who believed in justice. Sometimes I think about that Christmas party, about the look on his face when I walked in wearing my uniform, about the way the room went silent, the way the truth spread like wildfire through those guests. About my father being handcuffed in the cabin, head stolen. There's no satisfaction in that memory, just a kind of sad finality. That was the moment when whatever relationship wed had died completely. But from that death came something new. A relationship with Amanda that's real and honest. A relationship with Patricia that's built on love and shared grief. A purpose for this cabin that honors my mother's memory. A community of veterans whole find peace here, whole have space to heal. The nonprofit opens officially next month. We're calling it Susan's Haven, after my mother. Patricia cried when I told her the name. We've already had 12 applications from veterans transitioning out of service. Some are local. Some are from across the country. They'll come here for 1 week or 2 weeks, spend time in the mountains, talk with counselors, connect with other veterans, and figure out their next steps. I think about my mother often. I think about how she must have struggled, knowing what my father was capable of, trying to protect me even as she was dying. I think about the strength it took to plan for my future when she knew she wouldn't be there to see it. I think about the trust she placed in the legal documents she created, in Patricia, in the hope that I'd be smart enough and strong enough to fight for myself when the time came. She gave me more than an inheritance in a cabin. She gave me a blueprint for how to protect what matters. She gave me the tools I needed to survive her loss and my father's betrayal. She gave me roots strong enough to weather any storm. I've learned something important through all of this. Sometimes the most powerful response to cruelty is a clear boundary and the truth. I didn't need to shout or rage or seek revenge. I just needed to stand up, say this is wrong, and follow through. The system worked because I made it work. Justice came because I demanded it. There's a peace in that, a kind of grown-up understanding that sometimes doing the right thing means ending relationships, even family relationships. Sometimes love means letting go of people who refuse to change. Sometimes healing means building something new from the wreckage of what was destroyed. I'm 28 years old, a combat veteran, and a survivor of family betrayal. I own a cabin in the Smoky Mountains that's going to help dozens of veterans find their footing after war. I have a sister who chose honesty over comfort, an aunt who chose me over her brother-in-law, and a mother whose love protects me still, years after her death. And I have something else, the knowledge that I can survive anything. War, loss, betrayal, all of it. I can face the truth, no matter how painful. I can demand justice, even when it costs me. I can build a life that matters, even from broken pieces. That text message on Christmas seemed like an ending. It felt like the final rejection, the last proof that I wasn't wanted or valued. But it was actually a beginning. It was the moment when I stopped hoping my father would change and started taking control of my own life. It was the moment when I understood that my worth wasn't determined by who rejected me, but by who I chose to become, despite that rejection. So here I sit, on the deck of my mother's cabin, watching the mountains turn purple in the fading light. The February air is cold, but the cabin is warm. There's coffee brewing inside, and Patricia will be here soon with dinner. Amanda's bringing paint samples to help me redo one of the bedrooms. Tomorrow, I meet with the nonprofit coordinators to finalize the opening schedule. This is my life now, not the one I imagined, but maybe a better one, not built on the shaky foundation of a father's conditional love, but on the solid ground of my own choices, my own values, my own strength. My mother left me this cabin to give me security. I'm using it to give others hope. My father tried to steal my future. Instead, he freed me from the weight of obligatory family loyalty. And I, through all of this, learned the most important lesson of all. You can't control how others treat you, but you can control how you respond. You can demand better. You can walk away. You can build something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to have. Sometimes the greatest gift is the freedom to choose who you let into your life, who you trust with your heart, who you call family. Blood doesn't make family. Loyalty does. Honesty does. Love that protects instead of wounds does. I understood that on the plane when I typed that single word, and I understand it now, sitting here in the peace I've built for myself, ready to share it with others who need it. This is what healing looks like. This is what justice feels like. This is what it means to honor the people who loved you by becoming someone worthy of that love. The cabin lights glow warm against the darkening sky. Inside, there's space for healing. Outside, the mountains stand eternal, just like they did when my mother was here, just like they will long after I'm gone. And in between, there's this moment, this peace, this hard-won understanding that sometimes being rejected by the wrong people is the first step toward finding the right ones. I hope my story resonates with you. Have you ever had to set a boundary with family that felt impossible? How did you find the courage to protect yourself when it meant standing alone? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, or if you know someone who needs to hear it, please consider liking this video and sharing it. And if you want to hear more stories about finding strength in the hardest moments, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening. And remember, your worth is not determined by who rejects you, but by the life you choose to build despite that rejection. Take care of yourselves, protect what matters, and know that you deserve people in your life who treat you with honesty and respect. Until next time.